Canada, eh?
Hey everyone, it's the Canadian Card Collector here, back again with another video. Today we are continuing our Sports Cards for Beginners series. If you tuned in last time, I went through just where to get started with sports cards and how to organize yourself as a new collector. Today I'm going to talk about the types of cards you can find out there, beginning with inserts and parallels. These are the big differentiators of the past few decades and have absolutely exploded in value and in quantity as well. I'm going to take you through some of the history of inserts and parallels, how they came about and where they have evolved to today. And hopefully by the end of the video, you'll have a much better understanding of what to look for if you're just beginning and how to assess different types of cards. So depending on your age, if you were a collector back in the early 90s or late 80s, you were basically left with only base cards. Now, there were some exceptions, some very, very rare exceptions, but in general, what we had were base cards. So as you can see on the screen here, a Mickey Mantle, Mario Lemieux, Michael Jordan, these are all base cards from their respective sets. And there were, on occasion, some little subsets or unique cards with multiple players or kind of like average leaders or home run leaders or assist leaders. Those were still all base cards. By the early 90s, we began to see inserts. Inserts were separate from the base set and they were put into packs with their own odds. So, for example, some were very common still. You could find an insert in each pack. That doesn't mean you'll find the player you want, but you will find the type of insert in each pack. Sometimes they were inserted once per box, other times even more rare than that. And this continued on until today. Now we see things called case hits where there's only one per case, some even more rare than that. But as you can see by the Michael Jordan card here, this is called the Stadium Club Beam Team, a very famous early example of an insert of his. These are very highly sought after simply because these are one of his earliest example. Some, I think, call this his first insert, although there's some debate around that. This card was not part of the base set. This was its own thing. And that's what inserts really are. They often have like a cool title that's displayed, and that just differentiates them and lets you know that you hit an insert. The other differentiators that came shortly after are parallels. The first types of parallels that everybody knows are refractors. Topps Finest produced refractors for the first time in 1993, and these were very similar to the base cards. There are two examples here that show basically the exact card that you would find as a base card, except they were much shinier. That doesn't seem like a big of a difference, but it can make all the difference to collectors. They essentially kind of bend in the light and really have an amazing look to them that's very unique. Today you will find tons and tons of these types of refractor cards. They come in different names, but the principles are still the same. After inserts and parallels came about, we started to see even more rare cards, which were essentially parallels of inserts. So in this example, we have a Wayne Gretzky insert card called the Mystery Finest, but on top of that, we had the refractor parallel of that. So essentially, you got even more rare versions of rare cards. This really was the beginning of kind of stacking rarity on top of rarity. And it allows collectors to not only have rare collectibles, but even more rare collectibles for different tiers of collectors. By the 2010s, parallels really began to explode. Through the 2000s, Topps had a license for different sports, and they produced many different types of refractors. However, it was always limited to only a few. And by the 2010s, Panini took over the license for basketball and football and began to create a lot of different parallels. In this example, you'll see the 2012 version of their first Prisms, and there was only technically four parallels. We had the base, we had the silver, which was kind of like a refractor, we had the gold and the green, but this really took off and exploded by the late 2010s and early 2020s. By 2020, there were really dozens of colors for one card. As you can see here, I'm only showing 4 examples of the 2020 Justin Herbert rookie card. He actually has over 20 different parallels just of this one card. You have to remember there's many different sets, and many different cards, and each one of those often has its own parallels. So it's essentially the same photo, but as you can see, we are well past the basic refractors. We have different kind of colors and different types of shapes associated with those colors. These vary greatly in rarity, some of them being numbered. So some cards can have their own serial numbers, while others have no serial numbers, but can also be very rare on their own. One of the tricky parts is they don't actually print the type of parallel you'll find on the card, so you're left kind of researching things on your own and looking things up. As you can see, Topps regained its license recently for basketball and has produced in its latest set for Topps Chrome 66 parallels just for these cards. It's basically never ending, which provides some pros and cons. The pro is that if you are a collector of different parallels, you have a lot of options. However, it becomes very difficult to complete what collectors call the rainbow, which is essentially all the parallels of one player. The varying degrees of rarity make it very difficult to complete. As I've been saying, these cards can vary greatly in rarity, and because of that, the prices can also vary greatly. As you can see here, the 2023 Prism Victor Wembanyama rookie card in its base form really goes for about $5 to $20, while the black parallel, which is very similar looking in almost every way, but has a very distinct black border and a one-of-one serial number, was sold recently for over $5 million. Inserts continue to evolve today. We've been speaking a lot about parallels, but inserts from the 90s really paved the way for inserts today. Some popular ones that you will see basically everywhere you go are Kabooms, Downtowns, and Color Blasts. These are all over for different sports as well. I'm showing 3 basketball examples, but you'll find these in soccer, football, and even unlicensed baseball. Here's a few more examples of inserts. There's what's called the blank slate on the far left. In the middle, we have an insert called AKA with a player's nickname. And then we have on the right the Shohei Ohtani All Aces card. There are many, many types of inserts, and they vary greatly in price, just like parallels. Just because you may not be able to afford one insert doesn't mean you can't afford another of the same player. There are so many different inserts out there today that there's something for everybody. That's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and got to know the differences between base cards, parallels, and inserts. Let me know down in the comments if something is unclear. I'd be happy to explain it. In the next episode, I will be breaking down numbered cards, die cuts, autos, and patch cards for everybody. Hopefully you are enjoying this series so far, and I will see you again soon.